Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. Voice of the Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atin sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugo, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong, ipag the Blue Eagle, galing hiding at tigil.
ATIN YAN. Catch the latest news about the latest happenings in and around the Ateneo. ATIN YAN. Be in the know and get to know persons and personages in the Ateneo. ATIN YAN. ATIN YAN. Ateneo yan. ATIN YAN. Fly high, Blue Eagle fly.
Syllabus, 2008.
Yeah, I'm earlier. Let's put it that way.
Really?
Oo naman kapatid. No, si JC yata. Si JC.
JC is 2007. Oo nga naman. Right.
Yes. Alright, so
So we're on. Okay,
Can I
so I
share
guess...
this? I can share this on my screen, on my Facebook, no? Sorry, never mind.
yes, you may.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
All right, I think we're on. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a Thursday afternoon. Today is May. Oh no, I have lost all sense of that. 14, is it just?
May 14.
All right. So it will be a payday weekend pala. So welcome to Thursday afternoon on Radyo Katipunan 87.9, and thank you for joining us. This program is ATIN YAN, and welcome to the show. Ako po si Cholo, Mallillin.
Yes, good afternoon everyone. Ako naman po si Castillo from the Loyola Schools. We're happy to be with you this afternoon.
Kumusta ka naman, kapatid? How have you been?
Okay naman. Lagi naman tayo magkasama sa meetings.
Ayan. So, we have our thinking caps on as usual. We are the world's finest. Ayan. Ako si Superman. Ayan, si Batman.
Magkasama kami.
Alright.
Ang color ng ating guest, ang colors ng ating guest, pwede siyang Wonder Woman.
Oh wow! So this is the holy trinity of the comic dom. Well, anyway, good afternoon and welcome. Ayan, as you mentioned nga kapatid, we have been working. Actually, a lot of us who are administrators of the respective units, both myself and Chris are with the Loyola Schools, with the college, no? And we have actually been working quite a lot these past few days, trying to get a grasp of what the new normal will be like when everybody somehow makes their way back to school. So as of this time, we're on a break. All right, it's sort of like the break before we start the intersession, which was pushed back to July. So we're starting off regular semesters, school semesters in July, also in compliance with what the IATF has recommended. But a lot of people are kind of dreading going back to school because they have no expectation, and at the same time they have no idea of what the school setup will be like in the coming new school year. Di ba, Chris?
That's right, no? And this is true whether you're in basic ed or you are in the tertiary or even in postgraduate, no? There's a lot of uncertainty. But at the same time, we also know that, well, the learning can't stop, no? There has to be a way for us to continue the most essential things in life. And so as far as academic and information learnings are concerned, there is that call to go online. No? There are various terms used for that. No? Adaptive learning is what Ateneo uses. There are terms like asynchronous, parang comic character yun, kapatid, you know?
Asynchronous, first time, I have to get used to that term, but I think we are going to be hearing more about that kind of learning. So adaptive learning is actually what we entitled this episode, and our guest today will enlighten us on how learning can still take place in the new normal. Our guest for today is connected with a nonprofit organization called the Philippine Business for Education. I think it's PBEd or PBEd is PBEd. PBEd is a business community response for the need for greater education and economy alignment. And their vision is for all Filipinos to have access to an educational system that provides them with the needed competencies and values to lead productive lives and successful careers. So I guess it goes even way beyond school, no? Our guest this afternoon is a human capital development and education specialist with PBEd, and she's currently the executive director of PBEd, the Philippine Business for Education, and is an independent director of a fintech startup. Maybe we'll find out more about that also. She is a graduate of the Ateneo de Manila University. I don't want to reveal what year anymore she graduated in, but she is a poli-sci. She finished political science from Ateneo de Manila University, and she has a master's degree from Harvard University. So please welcome to the show our guest for this afternoon on ATIN YAN, Miss Love Basillote.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Cholo. Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you
for coming on.
I'm excited to be back to my virtual alma mater.
Yeah, and then we hope that when things go back to that new normal and some more face-to-face interaction is allowed, we get to see you as well, no? And we get to talk more about your advocacy and your work. Right? But for now, as we had mentioned, no, there's a lot of uncertainty, all right? There's a lot of uncertainty specifically for structures, for how things could be. We all just know it can't be the way it was. But in terms of academics and learning, I think there's something you have to offer and to share. Right?
I think just to put it into perspective, if companies have a business continuity plan, parang schools and educational institutions have to have a learning continuity plan. And I think this is what they will share with us.
Right. So actually, I mean, interestingly enough, PBEd organized a webinar this morning to precisely talk about this. We have a webinar series we call PBEd Talk Thursday. So it's every Thursday at 10 a.m. And we talk about various education topics or themes. So this week's theme was the new normal for basic ed. Next week it will be for higher ed, also this new normal, right? And basically what I took out from that webinar this morning was no one really has a solution, right? Parang we're all looking for ways to make sure that learning continues. But it's almost like searching for light at the end of this tunnel. But we don't even know when this tunnel will end or where the end is. One of the speakers talked about the beginning of the beginning of this, something that we don't even really know. So
the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah, and Father Johnny Go, who's heading Ateneo
Yes.
Salt Institute, also talked about, like we're trying to build a bridge as we try to get to that particular new normal. But we're not just crossing the bridge, right? We're building it as we go. So all that to say that I don't necessarily have the answers to the questions of how we can continue learning, but perhaps what I can offer is actually some perspectives or maybe some questions. Because just as an Atenean,
Yes.
we're a liberal arts university. We're taught to ask questions rather
Yes.
than just like our philo
We
classes.
get to we get to the right answers if we ask the right questions. So that's
Correct,
very important, right?
Yeah. So actually, I think in terms of the learning continuity plan, because this is really something that is very so uncharted territory, right? We don't really know what's in it for us, or what will happen in the future, what this new normal will actually look like.
Yeah.
I'd like to maybe go back to some design thinking principles, only because this changing environment requires both technical and adaptive leadership. By technical leadership, I mean, you need to be competent. You need to be able to look at the data. I think that's what the Ateneo gives us. That we're supposedly professional, right? On the for others part, which is really where the adaptive learning comes, the adaptive leadership should come in, is then as we try to figure things out, we need to we need to think about the design principles, because we are designing the solution as we go. So one question that I think we should ask ourselves is, what are the current constraints, right? So given what we currently have now, so we know that in the Philippines it can't just be as simple as transferring the classroom online, because not everyone has internet. Not everyone even has a device to use as a learning tool. In some families, you have households with more than one child or learner at different grade levels. So what if you only have one computer, right? So these constraints in terms of how we organize our class, our day, our schedules, can't just be the transfer of how we normally do education from in person, face to face, to online. Similarly, what do we do with, or how do we better support teachers, right? So these constraints as well. Not all of our teachers are adept at handling technology. And so how do we make sure as well that they are capacitated, they have the right tools in order for them to actually deliver this blended mode of learning. Now we also have some questions on the role of the parents. How do we now, given that most of the education will happen in the home, the role of the parents suddenly increased, right? Public education was started because parents had to go to work. Parents had to be productive outside of the home. But now parents are working in the home and taking care of their children, and then suddenly on top of that, also now in charge of the education or schooling of their children. And so what do we do with parents? So thinking about these constraints, both from the human side and the technology side, I think will help us come up with solutions together. I just want to highlight two things actually that came out or that resonated with me from our webinar this morning. The first one was there is collective. This came from Father Johnny. He called it the wisdom of experience. And then adding that to one of the other speakers who talked about collaboration and creativity and how we can really bring together these collective experiences or collective wisdoms so that we can come up with solutions together, and how we can amplify these stories as well of hope, right? Because in darkness, it's very difficult. It's very easy for us to just like lose sight of the bigger picture. Just think about whatever is right in the here and now, and be desperate. But yes, it's important to also unearth these wisdoms, these like stories of hope, and maybe collectively we can come up with solutions together. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I don't really have very concrete solutions to the learning continuity problem, but I hope that these questions can help people think about how we can make sure that learning still continues and is still relevant in these trying times.
Yes, no, and then well, thank you for that input, no, love. And I think it's really not so much about having the answers right away, no, but it starts really with the conversations. It starts with the listening. It starts with hearing out the concerns here and there. No? Curiously, from your perspective, would you have an idea what are, apart from what you had already mentioned, no? What are, let's say, the top 3 concerns of one, the parents, and 2, learners, if you just break it into basic ed and tertiary? Ano yung mga, from the data that you have probably, what are their concerns and needs right now?
Well, for parents, I think primarily I think for parents,
and Cholo and I are both parents.
I'm not a parent, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask. But from talking to my in-laws and my sister who has a child, it's really managing your time, right? Because as I said, there are now multiple demands. Not only do you need to be productive at work while you're at home, but you also need to take care about like household chores and
that's right.
And caring for your children. I think this is even really more difficult for women who are traditionally seen as carers and home, like doing work for the home. So it's I think there's also like a gender question on the role of the parents as well, like who's the educator who acts as the teacher, because sometimes when you act as a teacher you need to be a bit strict.
That's right.
So like the roles become very confusing, and so that's something that I think parents need to navigate. Perhaps you would have more insights because if you're parents, then you could speak more to this topic.
That's right.
But from the learner's perspective, I think because I'd like to think that everyone is a learner. We're all lifelong learners, and that's really how we can adapt to these rapidly changing times. But I think we need to have some sort of clarity. There has to be some structure. So at least for me as a learner, it's important that I know where to go, right? Yeah. Like, cause where can I get these materials? Cause I can like learn on my own and stuff, but I just need to have directions. Like where can I actually access materials? How do I interact with the parents? And the teachers, what are the roles? They need to be clarified so that I also know how to act. And I think the biggest challenge as well is, like in the Philippines kasi, even before COVID, right? We really have a problem of learning in the country. We have a learning crisis. If you look at the PISA results, the PISA 2018 results that came out late last year, 80% of our 15-year-olds don't have the minimum global proficiency in literacy, math, and science. That's an overwhelming majority, right? I don't know, what were your courses back in college? Are you more on the social science side or the
humanities and social sciences?
I see. So if you look at the graph, the tail is it should move to the right, but then anyway, it's majority of our learners are really on the lower end of the graph. And so difficulty in learning has been a persistent problem. And so what this pandemic actually is doing isn't what it is doing is just really highlighting what is already there and making it even more difficult to handle, because now we cannot do the traditional way, like responses. If we do literacy, so we do like reading programs, we give out books, but then that doesn't really, how will you do that online? How do you assess? So I think for our learners, and this goes both for basic and the higher ed, there is that need to really make sure that like the education is relevant. They can improve their skills, but also I think I don't know, like maybe you can speak to this if your children are of age, but many of them are also thinking about mental health and well-being.
Yes,
and
right.
like how do I have agency or sort of self-efficacy for my own learning, or so many things, many considerations for learners, both on the skill side, so making sure that they are competent in whatever they are learning, but also on the social emotional side, and here I think we really need to look at it very closely, because we want an education system that is empathetic, that is inclusive, and so looking at these two ideas really, I think are considerations of many of our learners. Sorry, just to share, I feel like I'm talking too much, but this should be a conversation.
It's okay.
Right?
It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, but like for example, PBEd is implementing a youth and employability project. It's called Youth Works. It's funded or supported by USAID. And
Nice.
it's essentially we're giving tech voc training, a dualized tech voc training to out of school youth, so that they become more employable and they find meaningful employment after the training program. For tech voc, definitely that is it's a challenging time, because tech voc is usually delivered in person, right? Like how can you do welding when you can't actually weld something, right?
That's right.
But and so what we did was we looked at the constraints, right? Okay, what are the training considerations? So we looked at like our company partners, our school partners, what are they doing? We looked at the resources available as well. So we looked at like online courses. So TESDA has this excellent platform called TESDA Online Program. So some of their training programs are actually online, can be taught online, or can be learned online. So we looked at both the constraints and resources. We asked the youth, are you interested in training? Because, like maybe it's really trying times and stuff. And so actually when we asked and we listened to them, there is appetite for training. They want to do something concrete, and they want to improve themselves. But their main constraints are finances. So they don't have the device. So they don't even have internet connectivity. So like what we did was we gave them, load credit so they can access the internet. We're now thinking about how we can maybe loan them some tablets or like devices so they can learn online. So things like that. I think there is that desire of the youth and the learners to improve themselves, to learn. But obviously there are access considerations, issues that the system needs to address. So those I don't know. That was a really long way of answering your question, Chris. But I hope I was able to answer it.
I think at least it gives at least our audience a picture of how complex, in a sense, the situation is. But I like one of the points you made, where the things we are encountering now are actually still symptomatic of pre-existing conditions. It's just been amplified, I guess, in a way. But maybe the ATIN YAN in us, the idealist in us, it tells me that then this is a good time to actually finally confront it, because we have no other choice but to. After all, they do say, necessity is the mother of creativity. Yeah. So now there's a need, so we'll find creative ways of doing this.
No, you make a really good point. Sorry, Cholo, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, sure. No, I was just going to say that, Love, you touched on a lot of points that we're actually learning now through continuing conversations with our students, particularly your point about student well-being. We're finding out that when we're talking about online learning, adaptive learning, there is also the question of how open are the students in receiving such modules of education, whether it's online, straight up, synchronous learning or asynchronous learning. Point in fact, they don't even get up before 12 noon every day. So I have a college kid, and it's really hard for me to actually motivate her na, wake up early, be productive, try to do some chores at home. It's not there. It's really not probably their generation style of adapting to this new normal. So it's really hard for them to get out of bed before 12 noon every day. So to expect us to go back to a normal routine where first thing in the morning they're up and taking classes is kind of unrealistic. So
well,
I guess
to be fair to your daughter, I think everyone. To be fair to your daughter, it's a daughter, right?
Yes.
To be fair to your daughter, everyone is having a hard time waking up in the morning, regardless of age. And also, it's summer vacation, so she's probably tired. But yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's why it's important to have a routine, to have a structure, and to define that. I'd like to think that the youth actually, when you just give them, a sense of clarity, they follow through. I don't think that, they are slackers and then they don't want to just, do anything or whatever. It's I think given the space, and if you empower them, you ask them the right questions, you give them, some motivations, carrot stick. I don't know how you interact with your daughter, but I think for the system, like incentives, disincentives, like a right balance of that. I think will really enable them to become better, or to really self. What's the term that
be self-directed?
Self-motivated. So and then I think they are functional members of society. So I'm pretty sure if we just have those structures defined, and actually even working with them and involving them in the design of those structures, right? What is a learning environment that works for them? For us, for example, we are working with out of school youth, right? They are faced with many constraints. We're not talking like average ATIN YAN who probably has the latest iPhone and sorry, not to stereotype, but because I know that there are also ATIN YANs who are not
latest Samsung lang.
but I mean, more privileged than most, right? So we're talking about a population that have a lot of barriers to accessing quality education. And yet, if you just give them these opportunities, you tell them, like we've been talking to them, listening to them, asking them, okay, what do you need? What sort of skills do you want to, improve on? And then actually deliver training that's relevant to them. We were so surprised. 97% completed our online training program.
Oh, wow.
Ahead of schedule, ahead of schedule. More than half actually took more than what was necessary, what was required. So we asked them to do complete one module. More than half completed at least 2 modules. So, it's like if you give them the structure, the space, and the tools to actually access learning, I think there is that desire to actually, have to learn something. So
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious now, Love, about PBEd, and what are your exact programs that are open, I guess, to the general public, and how do you actually invite people to join your webinars? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the programs that you're running
Okay.
alongside this topic. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks for that, and thanks for allowing me to plug PBEd.
Of course.
So PBEd has what we call two programmatic verticals. The first
Okay.
one is teaching and learning, wherein our goal is really to align pre-service teacher development to the needs of the education system. So making sure that we develop strengthen the system that develops our teachers to become better teachers in the schools, and to deliver quality education. Under this particular vertical, we have a project called Step Up. It's a scholarship program for the best and brightest to become teachers. And what makes it different from the other teacher scholarship program is, while it is a merit scholarship, we also give adequate psychosocial and well-being support to our scholars. So we really have mentors for them, because we think that it's very important to have a safety net, a safe space for them to learn and develop further, and become better teachers. So that's the first one, and there we are pushing for policy. So PBEd is a policy advocacy group. We run projects to inform our policy recommendations. There we recommend that the teacher education curriculum should really be aligned with the learning and competency targets of the DepEd, so that we really teach or train our teachers for the classrooms that they will end up joining. So that's one. The second one is we're also looking at how we could better certify our teachers. Right now, it's only through a licensure exam. We don't know if a written exam is an adequate way for us to screen the good teachers from the teachers who still
Not so
need
good
further
ones.
teaching.
Yeah.
Just like rethinking the way we do teacher certification is the second major one. And then also just on this whole learning side, and I mentioned about this learning crisis that we've actually been experiencing for many years now. The importance of conversations is really highlighted, and so we are supportive of the DepEd's platform. They call it the Education Forum, wherein representatives from different sectors get to give their inputs on the learning continuity plan, some programs and stuff, and so people can just talk about it. But for us, we're looking at it more from like a systemic point of view, not just for basic ed. So we are pushing for an education commission. There was one back in 1991, led by the former Senator Ed Angara. Sorry,
Ed Angara.
Ed Angara. Which was really an excellent EdCom. It had multiple consultations all over the country. But the idea was, but now for this new EdCom, we need to think about technology, digital transformation, looking at it really from a systemic view, like basic ed, tertiary education, and how we can all bring of these perspectives together, and get the private sector, schools, civil society to chime in, and not just leave the legislating to legislators. So that's the first vertical, teaching and learning. The second vertical is workforce development, and it's really, the idea is connecting education to the needs of the economy, making sure that people who go through our education system are able to find productive livelihoods or jobs after, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you really want. You want people to be productive contributors to society. So here we are pushing for greater industry involvement in training, in standard setting. So I actually would like to invite fellow Ateneans who are running their own businesses, who are working in companies, to maybe share some of their time so that the CHED could develop curricula that are relevant to the current world of work. They get the perspective from the private sector. We are also pushing for more of these like feedback loops that we really need, so that the education system can pivot. The education system is a bit unwieldy. It's huge, and so it's difficult for it to be agile. But and that's really important for these times now, because we don't really know what the future holds, and we're trying to figure things out as we go along. But yeah, like just getting the feedback mechanisms to be there. Schools can ask industry, like, how are our graduates? Are they, do they have the skills that you need? And also from the industry perspective, telling schools like, okay, these are the things that we need. How can we help you? How can we be part of the training and not just be a recipient of your graduates? So yeah, the whole perspective for workforce development is really like these partnerships between the private sector, schools, and also government, like enabling all of these things, and just making sure that there's really like a good connection or alignment between the education system and the economy in general.
Yeah. I was going through your website earlier. Now, so for our audience, it's very easy to remember. It's pbed.ph. Again, it's just pbed.ph. And I'm happy to note that we have a program that actually helps K-12 graduates. No? And while, of course, perhaps most private schools tend to still pursue tertiary education, a lot of our countrymen, especially those coming from public schools, would like to explore work immediately after K-12. And how has that been doing? I mean, how are the participants, etc.?
Yeah. So pre-COVID, that project actually, so it's called First Future, because it's kind of like a play on this supposed prediction that like generations of today will have 8 careers in their lifetimes.
Okay.
Not jobs but careers, right?
Careers, okay.
So anyway, this was just to give them a first of the many futures that they're supposed to have. And so pre-COVID, we were super overwhelmed by the support of the private sector, because initially we thought that the problem was because companies in the Philippines aren't used to hiring high school graduates for many of the jobs that probably can be done without a college degree, because there's just so many college graduates anyway. So
begin with,
So we at first, like that project was really to encourage companies to kind of like take on an affirmative action stance to employing K-12 graduates, and we were so surprised. In just a short span of time, we were able to have the private sector open up to 20,000 jobs for K-12 grads. We asked them what their experience was like hiring K-12 graduates. The response has also been very positive. They said that like K-12 grads are hardworking, they are willing to learn, they are willing to be mentored. So skills that I think employers are looking for. It's more the humility, right? Like you'd go into the company thinking that I'm here to learn and be better, and not just go in there and say, oh, magaling ako. I mean, you can say magaling ako, but still be willing to learn, right?
Pwede pa akong gumaling.
Yeah, pwede pa akong mas gumaling. We were very surprised. For this particular post-COVID, I think that there will be a lot of people looking for jobs. We asked our company partners whether they'll be hiring. Right now, though, there's kind of like a wait and see. Most of the training will happen, or most of the training in company training. We heard that it will most likely be for existing employees. So for those K-12 grads who have already found employment or are currently employed, then there is still that opportunity to be trained by your existing company. But I think actually you raised a good point, Chris, that what are the prospects now for K-12 grads who are looking for a job because these are very trying times, and it's perhaps they can't afford to go back to school even if it's technically free, but they cannot afford to forego the income that they can get from employment. So I think we also need to really look at it from a holistic and programmatic perspective, and perhaps design something specific to K-12, because pre-COVID there was an overwhelming response, but we don't know now, and so I think we all need to bring our collective wisdoms together and come up with a program specific for K-12 grads, or at least those youth who can no longer go back to school, and find something meaningful for them to do.
I look forward to the time when companies here in the Philippines can come out with announcements like what Twitter just did recently when they said, work from home permanently. So employees of Twitter, I think Instagram, their big bosses are saying, you know what, you can work from home as long as you want. So I think that's the kind of future that we hope to see more of developing here in the Philippines, when we can be more open really to the current conditions of the new normal. The faster we get there, the future is really coming to us talagang fast forward now, di ba? Dati parang dinadahan-dahan pa natin, but now we're in it, we're living it. So really have to adapt, di ba? Adapt, change, and hopefully turn out for the better after all of this. I just want to say hi to a few friends who are tuned in, people who should be tuned in because this conversation is also very important for them. Hi to Father Nono. Hello to Ms. Vika Bolipata Santos. Good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello.
My auntie Bless Mallillin, who's one of the administrators in the Ateneo Grade School, is also tuned in. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. And thank you also, Love, for joining us. We have learned quite a lot from you, and we do hope that you stay in touch with us and come on the show anytime. If there's, you did mention that there is a webinar next week for higher ed. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Baka we can join it.
Yes, definitely. Do join it. It's at 10 a.m. On Thursday. What is the date next week? The 21st. 21st. May 21st. Thursday next week, May 21. It's at 10 a.m. You can watch it on Facebook. You can just go to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/1PBEd. And then you can, watch it from there. Or if you want to be part of the Zoom call and ask questions there, I think you need to email a particular. I think it's online.events@pbed.ph.
Okay, right.
So
are all of these on your website?
It's our website. Registration details are also on our Facebook page, so they can also go to that and register.
Okay,
great.
We have, so it'll be cool. We have the president of the Jose Rizal University, Dr. Vince Pabelia, who will be speaking.
JRU.
And then also a higher ed expert specific for TVET from the Asian Development Bank, who will be speaking, Samir Katidwala. So it would be cool for everyone to just listen in or ask questions, and we can have a lively discussion.
Nice. All right. And hopefully we can get some more of our Ateneo faculty and administrators to join you in these webinars, like si Ma'am Len Espiritu, Doc Len Espiritu. Hello. Thank you for tuning in. And also Leonila Marasigan. All right. So thank you once again, Ms. Love Basillote from the Philippine Business for Education, PBEd. And you can find them on Facebook, Philippine Business for Education. Is that correct? On Facebook?
Yeah.
All right, and pbed.ph online at their website. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Cholo. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Love. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's keep in touch. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
For those of you who are tuned in, would want to guest on ATIN YAN, please do drop us a line or a note on Radio Katipunan. That's RADYO Katipunan @gmail.com. And do let us us know what you can share with us, especially during these trying times of the COVID crisis. And please do stay tuned for our next programs here on Radyo Katipunan 87.9. But for now, this has been Cholo, Mallillin,
And Chris Castillo po. We'll see you again next week. And in the meantime, take care and God bless you. Bye.
Stay safe.
Atin Yan. Catch the latest news about the latest happenings in and around the Ateneo. Atin Yan. Be in the know and get to know persons and personages in the Ateneo. Atin Yan. Atin yan. Ateneo yan. Atin Yan.